Someone's going to go for 2 and get it at some point.
It's 1:42 in the morning.
Yeah, that's all right. Number 1. Shocker. Ironton.
Man, give me the Trojans.
There we go.
Welcome into Overtime, presented by Perfection One. Along with John Bruce, my name is Dewey Dailey. As we welcome you into the first episode here in the winter sports season, we're going to take a look at the girls basketball conference landscapes. We're going to preview all of them, pick some winners, talk about some potential player of the years. Should be a fun episode as we, kind of inch and creep into that first week of both boys and girls basketball here in late November.
Yeah, the fun thing is, technically, our fall sports season coverage is still going on, as we'll talk about a little bit of Ironton football, do a little quick review for the soccer state tournament, as well as we nearly did a live show. If there would have been another game before the Minford state championship game, we would have had a live show, but we weren't going to be able to do a live show and actually be able to see the game. So,
Right.
Ended up being a no-go for that week, but yeah, so we'll talk a little bit about that. Girls basketball season has already started. This is coming out on Tuesday, correct? So there'll be more games on Monday night. I mean, it's early on Monday, so there's still some games that'll get some coverage tonight. I believe Derek and Carson are going to be at games tonight.
Yeah, it's Alexander Jackson and then
Miami Trace Adina. Yeah, so I saw 3 games this weekend, watched a couple back on YouTube as well, so I am very, very sharp right now. I'm not, but I did. Yeah, saw some really impressive talent. Got to sit by some college coaches that I don't think had any desire to be at the game I was at. Besides, they had a player that was already committed to their school, so they were just there for show. Shout out the Falcons.
All right, so we can talk a little bit about a few of our headlines. John alluded to them a little bit. We're going to talk about before we jump into the girls basketball preview, and just for a reminder, I put a post out on nobody saw it, but I put a post out on the Overtime Twitter saying Tuesday we would be previewing girls and boys, but we're actually going to split it into 2 episodes. So the boys preview will come out Wednesday morning. The girls will come out Tuesday, obviously. So, but we're going to talk about obviously Ironton going back to the Final Four in Division 5. It's been on the ticker. I think it actually just went past after they took down Wheelersburg in the regional final. Eastern just finished a game out, falling to Danville in the regional final. So Ironton once again back to the state stage. It's at Chillicothe and a pretty heavy favorite of the Fighting Tigers this Friday.
39-point favorite over West Liberty Salem, which if you play a team from the Southwest, you don't normally expect to have that large of a favorite. But I think with Division 5, it's just kind of the schools either went D4 or D6 in the Southwest that may have been in that Division 5 area. So it looks like as long as they play to their standard, Ironton should be back in the state championship game. But I watched them a couple weeks ago at field level against Harvest Prep, and oh my goodness, they're at a complete other level than the other schools in our area, which you've seen throughout the playoffs. They won 68-14, 44-0, 41-13, and 55-0 so far in the playoffs. They have just been unreal. And it's not just Sean Terry. You hear Sean Terry, that's the name you hear a lot, but they've got just a bevy of different players that are getting recruited for big reasons.
There goes Kermit.
Bob Cratchit.
Or Bob Cratchit.
Yeah, Bob Cratchit.
Very unstable frog.
Yeah, I don't understand why it was like that. But
I don't know.
Besides Sean Terry, they've got a bevy of players. I know the Johnson kid's going to go to Penn State, so there's a reason why. And just watching them play, like I said, at field level, they hit so hard on every play. Now, if you watch that Harvest Prep game, I'm not even going to talk about the end of it because, that happened. But
right over here.
Yeah, it was right over here in Tigertown. So it was the most penalty flags I've ever seen in a game. And it appears to have not been enough because Harvest Prep did not Harvest Prep did not deal with the loss very well. But I was impressed with how Ironton carried themselves in that game because when one team acts the way Harvest Prep did, there's a chance that Ironton could have responded, but they were disciplined and whatnot. So that's one of the reasons why they are the program that they've been over the last few years. They've done a great job, and hopefully we'll talk about them next week winning the state semi.
Hopefully. And you said West Liberty Salem,
West Liberty
39-point
Salem.
favorite this Friday
39
at Chillicothe.
yep,
Bernstein Field, Bobo Track.
At the Obadiah Harris Family, I think it's complex, but
Athletic Complex,
yeah,
something like that.
Yeah, so that, if you aren't going to a game and, you're waiting around to watch the SOSA Coaches Call-In show, that'll be coming on around 9:30. I believe that just went by as well, or is coming up. I don't know. I didn't look at how you did the ticker, but
it'll come up here in a second.
yeah, it'll come up on the ticker. But yeah, the Coaches Call-In show, which is a debut on Friday, which will be, I believe, around 9:30. We'll just kind of look for it. We'll have an announcement and whatnot of the official start time. Hopefully it'll be 9:30, but we'll see. Maybe a little earlier. But if you're waiting around for that and you're in the Chillicothe area, go over to Bernstein Field. Not a lot of great parking in the area, but it's a nice little area. You might be able to watch one or two of our men that cover for SOSA walking there, because I know one lives within walking range.
Right.
I technically do, but it would be about a half-hour walk, and as opposed to a 2-minute walk. But,
right.
So make sure fill that place up.
And then obviously over our break, Minford boys soccer makes a run to the state final. I don't remember the team, but falling 1-0 over at historic Crew Stadium. I think now a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, Summit Country Day was 2 weeks ago, so it was 2 Mondays ago, and they lost 1-0. And really, Summit Country Day controlled possession and had the majority of shots, but there weren't a lot of shots on goal. That Minford team, they won 4-0 in the state semi, which is insane, because the closest a Southeast District team had ever been was a 3-1 loss in the state semis, and they go and win 4-0. And it's just, Miles Montgomery had a hat trick in that game. It was just, it was really fun, to get to watch them make that run that they did. Didn't even win the SOC 2, but they go on to the state championship game and really battled Summit Country Day. The last 20 minutes, you could tell Summit Country Day was a little bit on their heels as Minford kind of opened the field up a little bit and tried to attack a little bit more. They did get a decent look within, I think, with like 30 seconds left. It was a defender, so it was not the highest percentage look, but they got a decent look from a little bit outside the box. It went high. So Minford ends up as state runner-up. Their girls reached the state semifinals. They lost a competitive 4-1 match to Cincinnati Madera, who went on to win the state championship as well. So if you're going to lose, and Wheelersburg probably doesn't like it brought up, but they lost to Riverview a couple weeks ago in the regional final. Riverview wins the Division IV state championship in boys. So,
not to mention Adina volleyball in the Final Four, also losing to who would go on to
win the state championship.
Tournament.
Yeah. So if you're gonna lose to the team that wins the state.
Right.
I mean, because then at least you can say, we lost to the best. And the good thing is our teams that made big tournament runs were able to say that they lost to the best. So. Shout out to the Minford soccer program for the runs that they made, and ultimately to the boys for getting to the final. Like I said, it was a great game, and it was great to see the Minford crowd with how big they turned out for that championship game. As it was probably, I think it was Ethan Cordell after the game said it was probably 3-1 in fans. I think it might have been closer to 4-1 in the Minford fans to the Summit Country Day, but ultimately came up short. But that's just going to go into basketball season as well, which we'll talk about on tomorrow's episode.
Right. All right, you ready to jump into the conference previews?
Yes.
All right, so just a quick rundown. We're going to talk about the SVC, the FAC, all three of the SOC conferences, as well as the OVC and both of the SHAC conferences. And obviously in each one of those, we're going to talk about last year's league champ, kind of where that team stands going into this season, a prediction for how this year is going to play out within each of these conferences, and as well as a player of the year prediction, or maybe just a few players that we think could contend at the top.
Yeah, so we do cover the Mid-State League, but only really about half of those teams we cover. So we're not going to do a full league preview for that. And, we just announced that we're covering the entire TVC, which we've always only done about half of that league. So we didn't do
half of one of the leagues.
Yeah, half of one of the leagues.
It's a quarter.
So we don't feel like we've seen enough of the entirety of these leagues to make, a real preview without shortchanging someone. Like we could say for the girls, Waterford girls have a pretty good chance to make it back to the Final Four. But can we say why? Like they do it, like they got a great coach. They have a lot of players returning from last year's state runner-up team, but we haven't got to see them in person to really be able to talk about them with, at some point we'll see them. And actually, I'll tell you who's going to see him is Carson is going to see him, and them in Fed Hawk. The Fed Hawk girls scored 91.
91-86.
Yeah, 91-86 in their season opener. So it would have been nice if we could have got over to that game just purely for the points. But yeah, it's so throughout the season, you're going to see more about the Mid-State League and TVC hockey and Ohio. It's just not right now. Once we see a little bit more, as we said, you'll see more.
All right, we're going to start off with the Saddle Valley Conference and the way it's split up. Obviously, if you did the math, it's 8 leagues we're going to talk about. John will do 4, I'll do 4, and that same format will be followed on Wednesday when we talk about the boys' side. So.
So last year's league champ was the Union of Shermans. They went 21-4 overall, 14-0 in the SVC, their second straight perfect season in the league. They did fall pretty heavily to Fairland, which you could look back on stream if you wanted to. It's not the best example for Uniota, but a little more for Fairland.
Who also went on to the Final Four last year. We'll talk a little bit about that team later on.
Yeah, so it was a very good Uniota team that graduated, I believe, either 4 or 5. They had a couple that were out for the season that were unavailable, but 2 big ones were Amaris Betts. She averaged 12.4 points a game, over 1,000 career points. She's currently playing at Cedarville. And Amelia Urig, she averaged around 6 points, 7 rebounds a game, blocked a couple shots a game. She's now playing at Marietta. So they lost 2 college basketball players. So the 2 players that contributed to their success over the last couple of seasons. So that's something big for Coach Miller to have to replace. How's he going to do that? Well, a big one, Miley Smith. The 5'10 junior is the returning SVC player of the year. Probably should have been a 2-time, but lost it in a narrow vote her freshman year. But
you're going to see a lot of upper class. If it comes down to a tiebreaker, I feel like upperclassmen.
And the upperclassman she lost to Emma Garrison was an outstanding player as well. So I mean, it's no slight to her at all because she was an outstanding 4-year player for the Warriors. So Miley Smith last year averaged 17.3 points, 6.4 rebounds, a bunch, like it was like 3.5 assists, 3.5 steals, a couple blocks. Like she just did every little thing for Uniota. In their season opener, she had 19. In their second game, playing the 3-time state champions from Purcell Marion, she had a game high of 25/27. If you saw my tweet about the long 2, like it was like this
couple of them.
Yeah, and then she also had another long 2 that was definitely a 3 also that I don't know, like it was a blowout. So I think the officials, if you're an official, you're there for 32 minutes, like hopefully for you and hopefully for our streams, not more, because this is the only overtime you should want to be a part of. But if there is overtime, then you're doing 36 minutes, but it doesn't matter what the score is, do the game the right way. And the officials there did not. They just kind of, once it started to get out of hand, they just kind of let it go because it was her last 2 baskets and they were both definitely 3s. And I put the really egregious one on, and they actually ended up being 3 in the game that were long 2s and that were not long 2s. They were all 3s. And it was just like, and that was without watching
2 pointers from,
and that was without watching Purcell Marion. They might have had 2 or 3 of those because they just weren't paying attention. So if you're an official, call the game, do your best the entire game. I know most of ours do. It should be all. And those were not any of our, like none of them were officials I had ever seen. So not calling out any of our local officials on that. But so
save that for later in the year.
So she had 25 in that game. And like they had the 2-time Miss Basketball in Ohio. But I think she really made a statement on how talented of a player she is, especially because she was in foul trouble in the first half. So really impressed with what Miley Smith's been able to put together throughout her career so far. She's going to get to 1,000 points probably before Christmas, and overall just an outstanding player. So in case you're wondering on my POI prediction, she's one of my 2 that I even mentioned, and probably is, probably going to win it again. So my second one I even mentioned, Maya Hamilton, also of Unionota, 16.9 points a game last year. She really came along about midway through the year, really took control, but then got hurt. She's coming back from an injury. She's averaging like 8 points a game through their first 2. You can tell that she's still like working through it, but at the same time, she's moving really well. Just got to get those legs under her completely, and then she's going to be really dynamic for the Shermans again. But yeah, so she's the only senior starter that they have. Maggie Holbert had 20 in their first game, hit 5 threes. She averaged 3.3 assists a game last year. Really, really talented player. She started to start about midway through the year for them, and really adds a nice toughness and a shooting ability for them as well. They also have a really talented incoming freshman class led by 2 other starters. Charlotte Dennis, I believe they were listed at 6 foot freshman, and then Kiara Beard, who's a guard who hit 5 of 7 threes in that Purcell Marion game. So, I mean, they've got just a bevy of talent. They've got some good athletes coming off the bench: Jade Stewart, Aiden Dannison, Kendall Walker. I think that may have been it that really contributed in that Purcell Marion game. And like in that game, you're playing the best team in the state, and Holbert was out early. Hamilton and Smith, all 3 had 3 fouls, and they were in the positive at the end of they were down 6, but when all of those players left, they were down like 9. So they ended up cutting into the lead slightly with using their bench. So it was, really good effort from them. So my prediction for league champ is going to be Unionota. I don't think they're going to have really any difficult games. There's still the chance, because Huntington has a nice group. Allie Baker can really score it for them. She had 29 against Chillicothe in their season opener. So, I mean, and they have a really nice freshman group. It's a team, well-coached team at Huntington. At Huntington, that could be a really game to watch for them. Adina, Marley Halcomb, Cameron Sowers, J.C. Smith. You've got some kids that have had some success in other sports. Halcomb had a really good freshman year as well. They're really good athletes at Adina. Also a well-coached team. And, I'm going to get Huntington at Adina on Saturday. I'm going to, be talking or covering that game for us at SOSA. So that's going to be, an early season matchup. Those are 2 teams to look for. Another one is Piketon, Jalen Forbes, Layla Kelly. Really good athletes overall. They do some interesting stuff to get different kids shots, and I think their coaches do a good job as well. So they're an interesting group. So I could see those 3 teams competing for second, and maybe on an off night for Unionota, getting frisky, try to throw them off a little bit. So I think that ultimately it's Union's league to win, or actually to lose, because but they lost 2 starters midway through the year last year, so you never know what could happen. Anything can happen anytime. So that's why you go out and play the game. So also got to watch St. Trace win the other day
over Oak Hill.
Yeah, over Oak Hill. So they were down 2 starters in that game. They looked pretty good overall. So it's a team, that's a program that's getting better. And one of the starters was one of the volleyball players wasn't even planning on playing, and then so they scheduled their wisdom teeth out, and then they said they're going to play. So they ended up missing the first game because I don't think that's the easiest thing to schedule.
Right.
All I know is I got mine out in June, and it was horrible. Did you ever have yours out?
Yeah, it was rough.
And you definitely didn't miss school because how many days?
Well,
of school
mine
did you
was
ever
in the
miss?
summer. I never missed a full day. I got there late and left early like 2 or 3 times.
It's a bomb.
So,
but yeah, so we got
technically had perfect. I got the award or whatever my freshman and senior year, and then the 2 in the middle. I came in late. One of the days I came in late was the PSAT day.
Oh, that's cheap. That's cheap.
I know.
Yeah, that's real cheap. But whatever. At least you got it multiple times. I didn't do it in school, but then I never used a sick day, ever as a teacher. And
I know one of the times I left early was a funeral too. So it was I never just did it. I remember my sophomore year couple of the seniors did, like the senior skip day, and like
Yeah.
they just got berated. It was in the spring, so it was baseball time. And
Yeah.
just got, I think they all got sat the next game.
Oh,
It was crazy.
yeah, and then our season fell apart.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were like 9-0,
We're
and
like
then,
the worst 1 seed of all time.
Yeah,
or
then
whatever we were.
ended up like 14-7 and lost like 6 or 7 in the season after the tournament draw. So
Yeah.
that was super fun. I really hated not coaching the exact same team next year for COVID. I would have enjoyed coaching you.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's kind of how we look at the SVC right now. The player of the year prediction, probably a 2-person race between Miley Smith and Maya Hamilton, and probably is going to be Miley Smith, but Maya Hamilton is just an outstanding offensive player, and I believe she had like 5 or 6 deflections in each of those games this weekend as well. So once she gets her legs under her, is going to be a player to watch out for in the SVC as well. But there's other players, from Huntington to Dina Pike that I mentioned, outstanding players as well. So.
Right, a lot of SVC first team selections that you'll see at the end of the year. All right, we can move on to the FAC now. Obviously, a great season last year for Jackson. We were talking about Unioda, and really just a week or two before the tournament started last year, Jackson with a big-time win over Unioda.
Yeah, that game was
I think
over.
That was at home.
It was over in the first quarter.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was crazy.
Because of one of the people you're going to talk about.
Right. So Jackson finishes up the regular season 21-3. They go a perfect 10-0 in the FAC. As of now, they've won 3 consecutive FAC league titles. The problem for them is they're graduating more or less all of their top scoring, right? TJ Carpenter averaged 18 points per game, the FAC Player of the Year last season. She graduates, as well as Maddie Walburn and Kinsey Davis, both averaging 12 points per game. It goes without saying, all 3 of those players first-team FAC selections. I think the FAC is one of those conferences where they don't do a first and second team. I think it's all just your all FAC or your honorable mention, or that's how they do it. Now, coming back for Jackson, and it's also worth mentioning that a brand new head coach for them in Chad Carpenter, formerly Matt Walburn, but he is no longer there. Coming back for them, in terms of leading scoring, you have Sydney Carpenter, who obviously we mentioned her name a lot in soccer, one of the better soccer players for Jackson. Was Jackson girls soccer the one that won the league for the first time in a while, or since joining the FAC? I can't remember.
It was McLean.
Was McLean won girls soccer?
I thought Jackson
Maybe it was last year. Either way, we're talking about basketball. Sydney Carpenter.
It was last year, and they did.
Yeah, it was like the first time since joining.
Yeah, because like Walburn and TJ Carpenter played.
Yeah.
Also.
But Sydney Carpenter, as a junior, averaged 6 points per game. Jalen Montgomery, she also averaged a little over a point per game, and that's the leading scoring coming back for Jackson. Now, I put Lauren Walburn's name down because we saw her in a couple of JV games last year. I felt like she looked very capable. Obviously probably going to have to step into some kind of role in a team that's fairly depleted at the top. And I'm not sure, and this is one thing I'll get into when I go into the prediction for the league champ this season. It's a team in Jackson that, despite how much scoring they've lost and how much seniority they've lost, it's still a program that kind of has a winning culture. So it's like, I don't think it would be surprising to see them at the top of this league. They're not my pick, but at the same time, I want to make it known that I'm not counting Jackson out. I'm just saying, in comparison to the last 3 years, I think we could see something a little bit different for the Iron Ladies. Now,
well, I was going to say, just throw out there, and you mentioned those 3 players all are playing college basketball too. So, I mean, so you lose 3 college basketball players and your head coach. Now, Chad Carpenter has a lot of coaching experience, very good coach, and I think we'll have them very prepared at all times, but you're losing a lot of talent on there. So I agree with what you're saying.
Now, coming into this season, I think I'm going to go with the Hillsboro Indians as my pick to win the FAC. They finish a little under 500 last year at 11-12. They do go 500, 5-5 in the FAC, finishing 3rd. Now, they were, in terms of how their league matchups ended up working out last season, they were swept by Jackson, split with McLean. as well as Chillicothe and Washington Courthouse, and they swept Miami Trace. Now, they did go 9-6 in their last 15 games last year, so they kind of, their better basketball was played in the second half of last season. And coming into this year, you're thinking, oh, they're returning all 5 of their top 5 scores from last season, but it seems like Blake Herdman not going to be back for her senior season. She was their leading scorer last year as a junior with 10 points per game in all FAC selection, but it seems like she's not on the roster this year, whether it's, not deciding to play or whatever the case may be. Herdman not going to be there for the Indians this year, but they are still returning 4 of their top 5 scores this season. Peyton Bledsoe, the other all-FAC selection for the Lady Indians. She averaged 8 points per game as well as 2.5 steals per game. And then you have Kobe Miles, Tylee Davis, and I'm assuming Kira Boyd. They all averaged 8 or more points per game last year, so still a lot coming back for Hillsborough. I already mentioned for Jackson, you have a winning culture, so it really would not be surprising to see them at least compete with the teams at the top of the FAC. Even with a new coach and presumably a lot of new faces on the court, it's still a team that has won 3 consecutive FAC league titles. Now, you look at the Player of the Year race, and I know we mentioned earlier in the SVC preview, it's, a lot of the older players are going to get the preference when it comes down to who ends up winning it. But I'm going to go with a sophomore from McLean, Paisley Pryor, an all-FAC selection as a freshman. And really, when you look at the FAC, it's a conference that's had a lot of underclassmen talent in the last handful of years. We've talked about the trio over at Jackson, extremely impactful from the jump for them. Obviously Pryor herself, an all-FAC selection as a freshman, and we can talk about J.C. Harding at Chillicothe was great her entire career for the Cavaliers. And I want to mention, if I'm not going with Hillsborough, I think McLean could potentially win the FAC as well. They go 12-11, 7-3 in the FAC, and I'll kind of allude to this throughout the previews of all of these conferences. Anytime you have the best player on the court, you have a chance to win the game. And I think, especially in FAC play, that's going to be the case for McLean in at least 10 games because you're going to play 10 league games. So don't count out the Tigers. I think, personally, in my opinion, they're going to have the best player in the FAC, but probably going to stick with Hillsborough as my pick for the conference champ.
Well, what you said, so, Herdman not coming back, averaged 10 points a game. But then you listed, Peyton Bledsoe, 7.8 points a game. But then Miles, Davis, and Boyd all averaged over 8 points a game. So if you're going to lose your leading scorer at 10 points a game, at least you had a lot of balance. Like, it wasn't like she averaged like 25 a game, and then you had nobody else that could score coming behind her. So that balance should make it to where Hillsborough should be able to figure out a couple of different things on that throughout their season. But you mentioned Paisley Pryor. She's outstanding. She can, score at all 3 levels. I only saw her once last year early. I was really impressed. And then, I find out afterwards that she was only a freshman. I was like, man, this is a player to watch for sure. And, hopefully we can get down there and get one of those games down at either McLean or Hillsborough, because I think there are going to be some really good matchups this year. I saw Miami Trace play on Friday. Yep. They shot the ball well, a new coach there. And, I think the FAC is going to be pretty interesting on every night this season as well.
I was going to look. I was trying to pull it up while you were talking, but you finished before I got there. I was going to try to look up when McLean and Hillsborough played for the first time. I have it pulled up now, and it looks like their first meeting isn't until December 21st, and that is at Hillsborough. So maybe if we don't have anything planned that day, they also play February 1st, and actually they play each other the last game each way through. So they'll be the last teams. They'll play each other the last time, the first time through, and then they are both of each other's last FAC games. So really, if my prediction ends up panning out, that last matchup on February 1st in Greenfield could be for the FAC. So we'll see how that sort of pans out as the conference season goes along.
Yeah, it should be a fun year over in the Frontier Athletic Conference for show. I don't know why I threw a show out there, but yeah, it should be a good year in the league. A lot of returning players, but a lot of new ones as well. Right. So we're going to see a lot of new faces across the league. So it should be fun.
Ready to move on to the SOC?
SOC 1. Let's go SOC 1. We're going to start with the Titans of Notre Dame, last year's champions. If you know anything about the small school SOC girls basketball, you know that Notre Dame has won the league every year for like the last like 12 years, and they never lose league games ever. It's like it's I feel like it's over 100 games now. There
Wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, it's a crazy it's a crazy schedule, or crazy, you know, strength of, like, what they've been able to put together with their program. They've been well coached. They had some different things last year, and it didn't matter. They still end up easily winning the league. They district champions once again. They went 20-5, 8-0 in the SOC 1, and it's just it's a program that is outstanding, and they have a standard, and they seemingly reach that standard pretty much yearly. So it wouldn't surprise me again, but they have a lot of talent that graduated from last year. Gracie Ashley, 16.2 points a game, 8 rebounds a game. Katie Strickland, 12.2 points a game, 8.7 rebounds a game. Both had great size overall. Ella Kirby, a little over 10 points a game. She made 63 threes on the season, a really good scorer. I know she went on to continue her career as well. And then Annabella Ball, 5.2 points a game, but 3.7 assists per game. So you lose 4 really quality seniors, but you're Notre Dame.
Right.
You feel like with what you have returning, including Bree Hicks and Kaylin Darden, a couple of seniors that averaged around 9 points a game combined between those two. You know, a lot less experience size-wise than what they've had, you know, with Ashley and Strickland, but it's a team that expects to win. They know how to win. They just came off of a volleyball season where they won another district championship there, their first one in a few years. And to me, it's a program that is just experienced in winning, and they expect to continue as well. So they are also my pick for the league champion, because once again, until someone knocks them off. Now,
Right.
when I say that, I will get into my player of the year predictions. Abby Knapp from Green, 26 points a game,
Wow.
12 rebounds a game as a freshman. We saw her over
She won Player of the Year there last year. It had to be her.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I mean,
it would have been her or Gracie Ashley.
I feel like you can't really score 26 a game and not get it. That's kind of wild.
Yeah. So, Abby Knapp from Green, 26 points a game as a freshman, just outstanding. We saw her over at Huntington. Like,
Yeah.
we went out of our way to go watch a game that we weren't streaming, and like we hardly do that at all. I think we only did it one other time last year.
We went to,
There's
who was
2
it? It was
times.
Waverly and somebody.
It was Waverly and Jackson.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's like
and
a
then,
sectional game, I think.
yeah, and we
Maybe
watched
it was right before the tournament.
I think it was Union Westfall boys.
Yeah.
Those are the
Yeah.
3 games we saw. So that was our out of our 40 streams last year. Those are the ones we went to. But yeah, so that to me says a lot about the talent that Abby Green has. They didn't have a ton of depth, but they did have every one of their players coming back this year. So Green is going to be one of those teams that's going to be in that kind of frisky category when they play Notre Dame, because Notre Dame, you know, with a lot of inexperience, if Green could be the team that gets them. So, but with that such a long win streak, I think you lean towards Notre Dame anyway. But Green is going to be very interesting. Emma Emnett from Clay, 15.8 points a game as a freshman. Sophia Kraft, she averaged a double-double last year as a sophomore. Those are both from Clay. Clay, once again, not a whole lot of depth. And, you know, these teams, and maybe that's a big difference in the two, but Clay and Green, I think, are going to be teams to look for, you know, late in the year and maybe throughout the whole year if their depth comes along, because they've got the high end players. It's just the secondary players have to, you know, help them take it to another level for them. I saw Clay already had a game. Actually, both of them already had a game postponed, Clay with East. So hopefully East can be able to put together a season. We'll see. That game, I think, was tonight. It might be tomorrow. Was postponed. And then Green was supposed to play Eastern on Friday, but like, why would they play when Eastern's in the regional finals? So that got postponed as well. So look for, Knapp, Emnett, Kraft this year as some players that, away from Notre Dame that are going to, push the Titans throughout the year. But right now I still have the Titans taking the league.
Yeah, I mean, I just think all of the other SOC1 schools just need to team up. I mean,
yeah, you put those three together.
Oh, I mean, you got to be able to pull somebody from East, pull somebody from New Boston. I think that's everybody because you only play 8 league games. That means there's 5 teams.
I don't know if Ironton St. Joe, they didn't have a team last year.
So yeah, so Clay, New Boston, East,
I want to say
Green,
something
and Notre Dame.
I'm going to say something about Ironton St. Joseph. I'm going to look at the camera when I say it. You're the smallest school in the state with boys. Mm-hmm. I just said I was going to look in the camera and I looked away. They have like 3 times as many girls. How do you not have a girls basketball team? You got to put a basketball team together. I don't know if they did this year or not, but you got to.
I don't have class tomorrow either.
Hey, attaboy. We're going all night. I'm just kidding. We're not.
We're actually recording pretty early today.
Yeah.
Usually it's like right before the Monday night game, but it's 4:40. We could have.
Yeah, we have a clock that you told me to not turn down, but stand up. It's 4:44. So yeah, we're talking about SOC1 basketball at 4:44 on a Monday. Hey. So let's go.
I was writing about SOC2 basketball yesterday at about 9 p.m. So, hey. All right. We all wrapped up with the SOC1. Notre Dame conference champs. Maybe Abby Knapp repeating, I think, is player of the year.
And then Clay's going to be frisky.
Right. All right. We'll go on to the SOC2. I will say, I think if I would be interested to see, and I'm not saying this in like a diminishing way, between the SOC1 and SOC2, which one do you think was covered the least in terms of writing and maybe live stream coverage? Girls basketball.
Oh,
because boys, we covered a little bit of the SOC2.
I would say 0% chance it was anyone but the SOC2.
You think we did well, I guess Notre Dame and Knapp, obviously, Green got player of the week a couple of times. It definitely was the SOC2.
Yeah, because I don't think that we talked about.
Now, we did.
No, we did, and we streamed one of their games. But I think before we streamed one of them, I don't think anyone even knew that South Gallia was in our coverage area. So
it was their first year, right? Yeah. First year for South Gallia in the SOC2 conference champs. They go 20-5, district runner-ups to a Notre Dame team. We were pretty excited for that matchup. I think they played once in the regular season as well, so we kind of had a preview into that. They go a perfect 10-0 in the SOC2, rather handedly, didn't have too much problem, and we saw them down in Seaman take down a North Adams team, and I believe at the time of that matchup, both teams were ranked in the top 5 in their divisions, I believe. Obviously, South Gallia D4, North Adams was Division 5. I'm not sure how those shake up.
No, they were Division 3 at the time.
Division 4, North Adams was Division 3.
Yeah, now we got more divisions.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
By the way, we have not looked at that. So
no, I'm not going to worry about that until tournament time.
Yeah, that's definitely closer to tournament time.
But for South Gallia, big problems coming up this season for the Rebels. They graduate 4 of their top 6 scorers, including the SOC2 Player of the Year, Morgan Lyons. 14 points per game, 8.5 rebounds. I think she went to Rio is where she ended up going. Got to see her in person once.
She can play.
And, everything you expect, right? Tori Triplett, another SOC2 first-teamer, as well as the SOC2 Defensive Player of the Year, 12.5 points per game. She graduates as well.
I would think, if you're not going to be Player of the Year, Player of the Year, you're probably super proud of that. But, like, Defensive Player of the Year, that, to me, as someone who wasn't good, if I could have been so good defensively that someone would have, given me an award for that, like that would have been great and I'm sure coaches love coaching the Defensive Player of the Year because, you can have an off night shooting, but you can't take an off night on the defensive end. And, we saw her in person. Tori Triplett didn't take a night off that night, and apparently didn't do it in the SOC2 play at all.
Right. Macy Sanders averaged 7 points per game. She also graduated. Now, coming back for the Rebels, Madison Summers, back for her senior season. An SOC2 second team selection, 6.5 points per game. I wanted to mention J.C. Booth, a junior, averaged 6 points per game last year. One of the pieces of a South Gallia girls JV team that I was rather impressed with, that South Gallia North Adams girls JV game was one of the better JV games we saw last year. And I think Booth, a big part of it. And, she's one of those players that She's going to play probably 3 or 4 quarters of the JV game, and obviously you can only play 6
Right.
in one night, so limited to at the most 2, maybe 3 quarters if you're lucky of varsity experience. I think it wouldn't surprise me if she vaults right into like an SOC2 first team, or just based
Right.
on what we saw last year from her.
Yeah, she looked really good in that game. She played a lot in that varsity game, hit a couple shots in that. So, yeah, it's a team that even though you lost a lot, it's sometimes the JV games while we're setting up are not great. So we kind of are prepping for the games and whatnot. Like we're watching that one because it was a really good game.
Yeah.
And it was really well played, and it was played at a real pace.
Yep.
It was played to me, it was played like the varsity game was played that night. So it was North Adams and South Gaia, both obviously to me had good coaches at those levels because they were
District tournament teams.
Yeah, and they're playing at the same type of style that you would play at the varsity level, where some places have to change that because you don't have the pieces. But yeah, I could see this being an interesting team for this year.
Now, going into this season, if all players that I believe are returning, because you never know with transfers, and we mentioned Herdman at Hillsborough, maybe they just decide not to play. I think Sims Valley is the current favorite to win the SOC2. I think they had a really underrated season last year. They go 16-7, 8-2 in the SOC2. Only conference losses were to South Gallia, and they only lost to South Gallia by 12 in their second meeting, which for the Rebels was their closest margin by far. I mean, they dominated the SOC2. Now, they are graduating Desiree Simpson as well as Jordan Ellison. Both of those players were SOC2 first-team selections, but for the Rebels, they're bringing back both of their SOC2 second-team selections in Lydia Sanders and Caitlin Maynard. Now, like I said before, I'm thinking South Gaia just lost too much at the top to repeat as conference champs. But once again, I wouldn't be surprised to see them compete with a Sims Valley team that I'm kind of guessing is going to end up winning the league, as well as a Northwest team that I wanted to talk about for a minute. Obviously, all the attention last year went to the Northwest boys team, who we'll talk about on Wednesday. They get their first district title in program history. I think they finished 21-4 or something to that extent. Northwest on their girls' side, they go 9-14 last season. They're returning both of their all SOC2 first team selections in Molly Ann Runyon, as well as Claire Newman. They only lost to Sims Valley by 10 at home in McDermott. In that version of their 2 matchups. I think Northwest could be a sneaky team on the girls' side. I'm still going to stick with Sims Valley, but I really think it's going to be Sims Valley, South Gallia, and Northwest. Obviously, those were the 3 teams at the top this season. I just think we're going to have a new team at the tippy top in Sims Valley this season. And I'll just make a quick note, right? I think Eastern, Oak Hill, and Western, they might be a few years away from, kind of rebuilding into a team that they want to be. I mean, last year, those 3 teams combined for a 6-56 record. Eastern accounted for 4 of those wins, whereas Oak Hill and Western split with each other, both teams finishing with 1 win. So I'm just not sure those 3 teams can be as competitive as South Gallia, Sims Valley, even Northwest. So for now, just before the season gets going, I'm predicting it'll be a 2-team race at the top between Sims Valley and South Gallia. I think Northwest is kind of a wild card in there in the race. Now, looking at the player of the year, this is one of the tougher ones I had to look at, because my only prediction here is that whoever wins the league, it's going to be their best player. That's the only thing I can go off of. So, for Sims Valley, right, we mentioned Lydia Saunders, Caitlin Maynard. Those are 2 players to look for. If Northwest can make a run and win the league, look for Newman or Runyon. And South Gallia, we talked about J.C. Booth as well as Madison Summers. So the player of the year prediction is tough there. I guess I would have to go with Lydia Saunders just because I'm predicting Sims Valley will win the league. But I think between those 3 teams, Sims Valley, South Gallia, and Northwest, we could see some competitive basketball games within the conference.
Yeah, I think that'll be an interesting league, especially at the top. Now, I will say the winner will be driving a lot of miles
Yep.
The loser will also be driving a lot of miles. This has got to be one of the more spread out leagues in our area, especially with, it's not easy to get to Sims Valley. It's also not easy to get to South Gaia, and to go to those places and have to play really good teams. Also, probably not very fun. So, should be an interesting league. Northwest has been getting better throughout the past few years. So, they're I like that you mentioned them as well. Oak Hill,
Won in
obviously
21 last year, I believe.
yeah, obviously they've
Won in
really
19.
struggled over the last few years, and they were one of the better programs for a really long time in the Southeast District. But athletically, I liked what I saw. They really struggled to score in that Zane Trace game, obviously, but athletically, it looked like they've got some pieces to maybe make some of those lower level games be a little more interesting at the lower end of the SOC too. But I think I agree with you on the Sims Valley, South Gaia. There should be good games. I think the top three, there's going to be really good games between all three of them.
And we'll talk about it on Wednesday. I think Sims Valley has a outside, I wouldn't even say an outside chance. I think Sims Valley has a pretty good chance to win both sides, boys and girls. We'll talk once again a little bit more about the boys side of the SOC2 on Wednesday. For now, we'll wrap up the SOC with the SOC3.
SOC3, last year's league champs. The Senators from West went 21-4 overall, 9-1
back to back
in the SOC3. One district.
Wow.
It was.
Well, I know, but they won the SOC2 the year before.
Yeah.
And then they
The
expanded
first
to 3,
ever.
right?
Win, yeah. But yeah, so they were.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, district champions once again. Really well coached team. I think they still have the same staff coming back, which would be really big for them in that way. But they did lose Emma Sayre, SOC3 Player of the Year, and one of the really point guards that make things go throughout the area. They also graduated Kate Rollins, Cameron Spriggs, Emily Moore, all of which were listed at 5'10" or taller. So you're losing some really good size. Positive. As I said, they're a really well coached team. It's a program that's very proud with how they play defense, and that JV team they had was ridiculous. So when we got to watch them, those weren't fun JV games because they were winning so handily. But it's because you had a really, really talented sophomore class. Now Macy Wisman played all varsity, so she wasn't 6 foot freshman last year.
You don't get that too often.
Yeah, she is unreal, and super talented. Really long, good length, can shoot it. Really good shot blocker as well. So she's going to be the one that really makes them go. But Haley Carver and Addie Stevens are another pair of players that coming back, without having stats, just knowing what these kids can do. Carver, a really good shooter. Stevens can do a lot of different things as well. So it's a group that, while you're graduating a really good senior class, you've won a ton of games over the last 2 years, it's still going to be a really competitive team over there on the west side. However, they split the league last year at the top with another one, the mighty Minford Falcons, who went 19-6 overall last year, 9-1 in the SOC3. They split during the regular season. One reason was Maggie Reisner hit a game winner.
Man, it's like a 39-37 final. Wasn't very much.
It was just a complete, just pretty much a fist fight without any fist being thrown. You had to fight for every point in that game. And Reisner hit the big shot at the buzzer. I was fortunate enough to get there and get the shot too.
Yeah.
And then get to see the boys team storm the court. And that's one of the big things with Minford is they have such good support for each other. But yeah, so they graduated Kennedy Davis, who I believe went on to play college volleyball, which Emma Sayre also went to Marshall to play college volleyball as well. So some outstanding athletes graduating and moving on to really good things. For Minford, they return Lindsay Williams, a 6'4" senior who just committed to Radford, Division I player coming up for them. Maggie Reisner, who is the defensive player of the year in the league. As I mentioned, it's one of the biggest honors you can get is the defensive player of the year because that just shows, teams don't really want to play against you because how you play defensively.
I believe I think it was Sayre the year before won it. 'Cause I think somebody else may have won. Who would have won Player of the Year a couple years ago in the SOC
So
too?
Berg was really good
It was probably somebody from Wheelersburg, I would assume.
because they went to the Final Four that year.
Right.
Um,
It may. Man, I'm drawing a blank. But
they had like 4 really
Right.
good seniors at the time. But
but yeah, right.
that's what happens when you cover as many games as many games and teams as us. Like
Yeah.
it's,
But what I was getting at is like you have a player in Sayre who, defensive player of the year is a junior, player of the year is a senior, and obviously Reisner gets the nod as defensive player of the year last year.
Yeah, and it wouldn't surprise me if she takes that next step forward to being just the overall player of the year. But one of the big issues for them when it comes to like individual awards is how deep they are. Lexi Conkle, unreal. Real, like these kids are all winners. Like they're all, I believe, Williams played volleyball. The rest of them were on that soccer team that made it to the Final Four. So it could be a slow start to the season for them, but Lexi Conkle, their point guard, kind of makes everything go for them. She can shoot it from the outside as well as get to the basket really well. But then you got Marley Pendleton, Lexi Pendleton, Ava Cronin, Bailey Hammonds. It's just, do they have any underclassmen that can step in and really compete with them to help build the depth for next year as well? Because they've got a ton of seniors. I mean, that's 7 seniors right there, probably in their top 7 players in their rotation, all seniors. So they're going to have the depth. They're going to have the experience. And that's, to me, why I have them as my, team to watch for to win. Because they're my prediction for the league champ. 7 quality seniors. They're horrible to play against because of how hard they play on defense. They don't score a ton of points. So if you see that they beat a team, 39-30, that's borderline a blowout. Like that game was probably never really close because of how they play. It's a style that it's gritty, not the prettiest style. We talked with their coach before about it. But it's something they take pride in. They're going to really make you compete for every basket that you get. And that's one of the reasons why I enjoy watching them too, is because they're just such a good defensive team. If they can find some shooting and like some consistency from the outside, with a Conkle, Reisner, Cronin, even, Lindsey Williams can step out to about 15 and shoot it. Marley Pendleton really good around the basket. If they can get consistent scoring, they're going to be a headache for anyone they play throughout the year. They lost to Amanda Clear Creek, who returned a lot. They lost in their opener, but I wouldn't be surprised if by Christmas this team is hitting on all the cylinders because you had that really long tournament run in, obviously in soccer. So it could be a slow start for them, but I think they're going to be a team to watch for sure throughout the season.
Player of the year 2 years ago, Waverly.
Vogelmore.
Yeah.
Oh.
I completely forgot about her.
Yeah.
I was trying to think of a team because I know Waverly didn't finish at the top of the league that year, so I was trying to think of a team.
Oh, that might have been the maddest I've been after a girls' basketball game because, the maddest I was over an officiating call was definitely the Portsmouth Fairland game this year.
Man.
But that one I covered. It was Waverly at Minford. Vogelmore got fouled on a 3, and they called it a 2.
Oof.
And she didn't miss a free throw the entire game. And they were down 3. She ended up missing one because they had to. I think it ended up being a 2-point game. And, Minford had live streamed it, too. And, pulled it up. And it wasn't even close. It wasn't close. It was, clearly a 3. And she definitely got fouled on it. And it was just, I was livid afterwards. Because I'm like, what? Your job is to look. You got to know where their feet are.
Right.
Especially at the end of a game. So they're my pick. Minford, going back to that. Sorry for going on a little tangent. But
I got you going on the player of the year thing.
Yeah, but I think West, Wheelersburg, both are going to be interesting teams, especially at home.
Yep.
Wheelersburg is still going to be fairly young. I know they have Vastine coming back. They got some good juniors coming back as well. Scoring's going to be a big thing for them. But they're a team that you never want to play as well. West, I just think any team that can go on the road, you've got 5 league games on the road. If you can win 4 of those, you're going to win the league because obviously you're going to have a good chance to get a share of it, but it's so hard to win on the road because even Waverly, with the Reisner girl, has some really good athletes as well. So it's South Webster, they graduated a lot, but you've got some athletes. It's hard to win there. It's a really good league. It's a really talented league. My player of the year prediction, I went with Lindsey Williams from Minford. I think it's probably going to come down to a Minford player. But Wisman wouldn't surprise me. Vastine wouldn't surprise me. There was one name from Southwestern I was thinking of that kind of I blanked on, but yeah, it's a league. Now, if you told me that Lexiconco was going to win Player of the Year, I'd be like, okay, that's fine. I can see that. Told me Maggie Reisner, Ava Cronin, these players that have played for a long time that can really do some stuff. It wouldn't surprise me for Minford at all if it's any of their players because I really like their depth. I like their coaching. I like just their style, and that's why I've got them winning the league.
Be interested to see the Lindsey Williams Macy Wisman matchup.
Yes,
I feel like those are two of the more impactful players underneath, especially in the SOC too. Now you mentioned stuff on the road. The first meeting between those two teams, January 13th on the west side, so that'll be an early conference test for Minford, who, like you said, picking them to win the leagues. Based on they're bringing back a lot of seniors and split it last year, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, we can move on to the OVC. This one won't take too long, right? This is especially at the top. I mean, you talk about some of the best players in our coverage area over the last 2 or 3 years. I mean, this is where a lot of them have been at. So. Ohio Valley Conference last season split between Fairland and Portsmouth. They both go 13-1 in the Ohio Valley Conference with each team. So they split with each other, each team winning the matchup at their place. So Fairland winning in Proctorville and the Trojans winning at home in Portsmouth. Now, for Fairland, they've had at least a share in 7 of the last 8 league titles. The year they didn't, 2019-2020 season. Funny enough, Ironton actually won the league on the girls' side that year. Now, we'll start with Fairland when we talk about how the 2 league champs are looking heading into this season. Obviously, you graduate Bree Allen, 14 points per game, the OVC Player of the Year last season. As it stands, Fairland's all-time leading scorer. I'm not sure if that's boys and girls, but for sure on the girls' side for Allen. And they also graduate Kylie Bruce, 11 points per game. Felt like she really stepped her game up last season, going from her junior to senior years. It just felt like she was more impactful, especially on the offensive side, averaging double-digit points per game. Now, they're still bringing back a lot, right? You have Bailey Russell, 17 points per game last year. Cameron Barnett's and Addison Godby both around 9 points per game as well. I believe it's Issa Taliaferro, 5 points per game for her as well. And the Dragons already off to a great start, a 69-53 win over Harvest Prep last Friday. And I've mentioned it with a few teams, right? It's a team that is just, bottom line, they've had a winning culture, right? They've got a great head coach. And they have great players coming back as well, despite what they've lost. Right, last year we were talking about this Fairland team, saying, "Well, are they going to be the same without Tommy Hinkle?" Well, yeah, they were. They went to the Final Four, and now coming off the heels of losing Allen and Bruce, are they going to be able to get to a 26-2 finish and get to the Final Four? That remains to be seen. But I still think this is going to be a very good basketball team, and they just beat Harvest Prep by 16 points. So I think
it's a very good program.
I think they're going to be okay. Now, we'll talk about Portsmouth. Now, when I tell you they're graduating nothing, I mean it, right? In terms of players that played meaningful minutes, they didn't lose anything. This is a team that 2 years removed from running into a district final with 6 players and finished the game with 4. Now this is a team that's loaded up, right? They had that freshman class come in last year, and we mentioned on the podcast last year, it was a Portsmouth team that they weren't 3 good players away. They were 3 warm bodies away. Yeah. Now, they got 3 good players, right? Mm-hmm. They got more than that. They're bringing back Sienna Allen, Daisha Reed, Savannah Cantrell. Those are the upperclassmen that you can expect to see. Daisha Reed just signed the other day. I can't remember
I think it was Georgetown
which
College.
school it was, but I mean, a college player, one of the better shooters. I mean, you talk about letting it go from way downtown. I mean, some of the shots you're like, man, why'd she shoot? And then she makes it. I mean, it's crazy. And then obviously Sienna Allen, one of, if not, the best player in our coverage area, hasn't signed yet. But
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
she's-
you're going to see a Division I name next to hers in
she's
no
a
time.
top 3 or 4 player in her class across the state. So I mean, and that's pretty good because the state is loaded on the girls basketball side with talent.
And then obviously the what was a freshman class now as sophomores, Kiki Woods, she just had like 20 or
21.
30 the other night.
21.
I was very surprised. Like, man, they get these other girls going. They're going to have some problems for some of these other teams. Haven Carter comes back as well. I believe it's Bry Shannon is what I was corrected to last year. Also a sophomore, she comes back. I mentioned Cantrell. I mean, Cantrell is what, 6'3", 6'4"?
Really shoot it,
Yeah,
too.
shoot it from downtown. I mean, one of the more what's the word? One of the more, not diverse, maybe that is the word. Could do it from inside out, right? Can do it on the inside, grab rebounds, finish inside, but stretch big. Can also shoot from beyond the arc.
Which makes it a really tough matchup because you can't leave a big inside to protect the rim because then Cantrell's just going to shoot you out of it.
Right.
And then you pull your big outside and even though Reed will shoot from anywhere, she also can get to the basket, and then Haven Carter can kill you inside. And then Sienna Allen's just unreal, and it appears that Kiki Woods can do it everywhere too. It's like this team is
Hit a
absolutely
backflip
loaded.
after the win last year. Over Portsmouth.
Not much depth is the big thing. It's more depth than they've had, but that's to me is the only thing with them.
And there's a few other. KK Mays I didn't have listed. She played a little bit last year for them as well. But and we'll just jump right into the prediction for this year. I think this is the year that Portsmouth is going to win the league outright. Now I know that's probably a hot take. Some people may not think it is. The OVC league title for Portsmouth is still going to run through Proctorville, right? We've seen them beat Fairland at home. The game was a little more lopsided in favor of Fairland the second time around in Proctorville. Now, I do want to mention South Point a little bit. I don't think that South Point is a bad... I think they are the third-place team, just kind of from what I saw last year. Right now, I'm not sure they can compete with Fairland or Portsmouth, but you have Saratina Jackson coming back as a OVC first teamer last season. I think they made it to the district tournament last year. I think they lost to Adina, was who it ended up being. I think it's a good team, but when you have two super teams above you, it's just tough. I think if you put South Point, and I know we're talking about putting a team like South Point that's a little bit larger than some of these teams, but I think if you put South Point and the SOC too, or like one of the SHACs. I know in terms of geography that it may not make sense, but I think this team is just buried below two, generational teams in Portsmouth and Fairland. Now, player of the year, last year, Bree Allen. I think Sienna Allen going to get the nod this year. I think it's about time she's, got the nod. I mean, as a freshman and a sophomore, one of the better players in our coverage area. Early prediction, she's probably going to win it next year too, right? And it's a Portsmouth team too that I think Daisha Reed in a lot of conferences is winning player of the year too. And maybe she could absolutely go off this year and win it as a senior, and then maybe Allen wins it her senior season next year. But I think Sienna Allen definitely the favorite for player of the year. I think Portsmouth is going to win the league outright. No reason why Portsmouth shouldn't return to the state tournament. I think this is the year that Portsmouth is really going to put it all together, and they're still going to have a lot coming back next year as well.
I will make one. Well, actually, because I think they could go to different regions. I was going to say the only reason that I could see them not going to the state tournament is in Proctorville.
Yeah.
Because they're both in the same division this year. They're both in Division 5. That's one thing I do know for sure.
They could play 3 times.
Yeah, so they could play 3 times. And, it's, as you said, Fairland really, really well coached. So I could see them putting something together. And, I mean, they're very talented as well. I mean, Bailey Russell is just a pure scorer. And, Barnett's, I know, super hard worker, Godby, Taliaferro. They're a very good team. And it wouldn't surprise me if Fairland was able to earn a split or win it outright as well. But this Portsmouth team is just loaded. It's a team that the way they carry themselves is it's just going to get better throughout as they mature in age as well. So to me, that's like maybe the one thing that could have held them back. But I think as sophomores and juniors, it's going to be different for them because they're going to play super hard and they're going to play really hard defense. They're going to get after you. Not a ton of depth, probably they probably go too deep off the bench, but so foul trouble could be an issue there.
Yeah.
But I just think this Portsmouth team is just way too talented.
And who knows the freshman class
Right.
coming in, right? I mean, we haven't even seen them yet. Obviously, I think Portsmouth has only played one game. I think it was a 9-point win over Springfield or 19 or something like that. It was like 60-41.
Yeah,
I
which
think.
I mean, I had no clue on
I
Springfield. I like they're a 500 Division I team, but a 500 Division I team put them in the Southeast, and they're probably a top 5 team.
Right.
So because they're going to play a really tough schedule, so it's something you just kind of. Anytime a smaller school from the Southeast can go beat a bigger school that plays in the Southwest is always a good thing. So, or you play a bigger school in the Central, like Fairland did, and it's a good thing. So, I mean, you're only going to get better from those games, and if you can happen to win them, even better. So, I know Portsmouth is, this is not, to me, not a hot take. Not going to go undefeated because they play Laurel.
Again,
Who they beat last year, but they play them early in the season. They play a really tough schedule, so more than likely going to have a couple losses, which is fine. Like Fairland's gone through seasons with a couple of losses in the non-league, and it doesn't matter because it's going to get you ready for the postseason, and that's why these teams you're going to see have less home games because you're really challenging yourself in the non-league. So, yeah.
All right, you ready to talk about some Shaction? Preview some Shaction?
Yeah.
Talk about the SHAC 1 and the SHAC 2. You'll kick it off with the SHAC 1.
Yeah, North Adams was last year's league champions. They went 12-1 in the SHAC overall. Because remember, they play 8 games against their own division, 5 across division games to get to their 13 division games. So they went 21-6 overall, 12-1 in the SHAC. They are the regional runner-up last year. They lost a really hard-fought game to Portsmouth. I think Portsmouth ended up winning that game by like 15, but it was low scoring, and I know it was a battle throughout. But North Adams graduated. It's going to be 2 really tough players to replace. And Kenley Jones averaged 13.4 points a game, but could really shoot it and was their point guard, really good defender. That's going to be a really tough one to replace. Harley Brand, 9.2 points a game, really good defender, could shoot it, really hard player to replace. But returning, they got Caitlin Borger. Good length.
Did we decide that was Berger?
I don't know.
I can't remember.
I don't remember. I thought we decided on something and then went to the other.
Well, I thought we said Borger, but then
I
somebody...
said Berger, but before it's
B-O.
It's
B-O-E-R-G-E-R.
I know the guys from Good Guys told us the correct way, and I don't remember.
I guess I could look up like one of their broadcasts and see it.
Yeah.
Either way,
Berger or Borger.
You know who we're talking about.
Yeah. Either way, great touch inside. Really good shot blocker, good rebounder, 11.6 points a game. I would think that's going to go up a good bit this year because someone's going to have to score a little bit more. Another person that can score on the inside, Tatum Grooms, another senior, 8.1 points a game. Those two worked together inside last year, and I think they're going to see the ball a lot. Carly Kennedy coming back, 5.2 points a game last year. There's not a whole lot to talk about when it comes to North Adams because they really only played 7 players last year, and they graduated 3. So, like we said, though, with South Gallia, when South Gallia and North Adams match up in the JV, it was a really good matchup. And I know North Adams had like 3 or 4 freshmen in that group that, they're going to have to step into the varsity level. Now, they've got 3 good seniors. How are those sophomores going to mix in? Do they have any freshmen coming up? They're a well-coached team, really well-coached team, and they're going to battle you for sure. And to me, that's why I have them as my prediction for the league champ again. So, maybe this is the end of an era for North Adams. Maybe this is the last year that they run the SHAC, but Because Eastern Brown had it for a while. Then it's been North Adams the last few years.
Yeah.
One other team that I think could be really sneaky is Lynchburg Clay. Graduated their top 3 players from last year. The 3 of the top scorers in the league last year. Really good shooters, really good athletes. But one of the JV teams that I saw and really liked was that Lynchburg Clay team. So they had a lot of size, some shooters at that JV level, and were really talented. Talented underclassmen led by Madison McMullen, who really was the only freshman that got a lot of PT last year for Lynchburg Clay. So Lynchburg replaces 4 senior starters. So they're a team that I think could be sneaky now. I didn't look as tightly into their schedule. I know a couple years ago, I think it was Eastern and Lynchburg were done playing by the middle of December. So I don't know if the league
they get through their league schedule. At least last year got through it really quick.
Yeah, so I don't know if it's as strange as it was. They may have updated that a little bit. So I could see where, if North Adams and Lynchburg play twice early, that North Adams probably beats them twice early. If they play twice late in the season, I could see that being a little more balanced, because I think this Lynchburg team has some really good young talent as well. So I think those are going to be some interesting games for sure. But my player of the year prediction will be, along with league champions, Caitlin Borger.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah, we'll figure it out by the time we call one of their games, because I'm sure we'll get down to Seaman at some point this year, as they're very nice to us down there and set us up. And if we can get down on the court, that's great. But good guys will definitely be there covering some games as well. So they're a team. I don't know. Tournament success, is kind of up in the air. But man, the SHAC, even in a year where it's after they graduated, the last 2 years, they've graduated so much talent. Mm-hmm. Between what Eastern was able to put together for years, Riley Leonard was unreal. The North Adams teams.
But not even to mention, what if Maya Hamilton was still either at Fairfield or Eastern?
Right. Exactly. So there's some really talented teams in this league, and that's kind of to me, you see the depth of coaching, and the coaches are really good in this league. I don't know how much talent Eastern Brown has, but I really like Kevin Pickerel as a coach. I think maybe they sneak in there. Peebles, I know, graduated.
Have they had a run of players?
Yeah, they've had just super talented players.
Peyton Johnson, who was the one before? It was another P, wasn't it? If I remember right. I can't remember off the top of my head. But they've had, back-to-back, just insane players at the top.
Yeah, it's a it's a Peebles team that they've been really well coached for a long time. They made it to the Elite Eight a few years ago. I think it was when Peyton Johnson was a freshman. So they may take a step back, but it probably won't be for long. And it's West Union has the Staten girl who's really talented. So it's a team it's a league that they're probably going to go through some growing pains throughout the year, but they play a certain style that's fun to play. So you get a lot of your really good athletes out, and I think it's going to be a league to watch for throughout the year.
All right, let's wrap it up with the SHAC 2. Once again, the boys episode coming out. I'm not sure if I'll do it Wednesday. I might do it Friday, just to give the girls episode some time for people to watch. Either way, it'll be coming out this week, right. And we'll kind of get back into the 1 episode per week rhythm next week. So league champ last year, believe it or not, in the SHAC 2, Fayetteville Perry. They go 17-8. Once again, a very Now, I think this has a lot to do with the fact that they're in the Southwest district. So once tournament time comes, we don't hear much about Fayetteville Perry anymore. But they go 17-8 in the regular season, 10-3 in the SHAC 2. Now, all three. And this is the unique thing about the SHAC is you play the 4 teams on your side twice, and you play the 5 teams on the other side once. So you end up with 13 league games. They go 10-3, but they go 2-3 against teams in the SHAC 1. They go 8-0 against teams in the SHAC 2. You bring back co-coach of the year Tori Rummel. They are returning all 5 of their top 5 scores from last season, including both of their all-SHAC selections in Riley Kleemeyer and Lily Carlier, or Carlier, I'm not sure. Either way, the junior shot 39% from 3 on 94 attempts. The other 3 players, Kara Rummel, as a freshman, 8.5 points per game. That's not too bad, I'd say, as your rookie season at the varsity level. You also bring back Scarlett Crawford and Christina Murphy, both averaged 7.5 points per game. Now, prediction for the league champ this year, I don't see how it's not Fayetteville Perry. I mean, anytime you bring back all 5 of your top 5 scores in a year that you already won the league title, I don't see how you don't repeat at that. So I will pick Fayetteville. Some other teams, right? White Oak loses Dailey Part of graduation, so they'll look for a new top scorer. Fairfield loses Faith Donley, who averaged a little over 15.5 points per game. Now, Ripley is an interesting team. They go 12-12 last season. I believe.
You don't get it, do you?
No.
It was. Have you seen the Ripley museums?
Like the upside down buildings.
Yeah. So they had a show called Ripley's Believe It or Not.
Oh yeah.
So you're welcome.
They go 12-12 overall. I believe they're in the Southwest District as well. They're in the Southeast.
This is their first year in the Southeast.
So last year.
Last year they're in the Southwest.
But they go 4-9 in the SHAC. They bring back their top scorer, Brooklyn Manning, a junior. As a sophomore, averaged 10 points per game and 6.5 rebounds per game. They also bring back 2 of their other top 4 scorers in Grace Taylor and Raquel Hackney. So bringing back 3 of your top 4 scorers from last season. Now, Ripley is at Fayetteville Monday night, so that is tonight at the time of recording. So tomorrow morning we'll kind of get an idea of how this Ripley team sizes up against the defending league champs in Fayetteville Perry. And I could get proven wrong real quick if Ripley's able to pull off a win on the road against the Rockets Monday night. But I am going to go with Fayetteville Perry for my league champs. I'm not sure if they won it the year before. I believe Eastern's on that side, aren't they?
Eastern's
on the SHAC
Eastern would be on the bigger side, but Peebles would have won it because Peebles and Fairfield
the year
switched
before.
last year.
Yeah. So Fayetteville, I don't see how they don't go back to back. Now, Player of the Year. This is kind of hard for me to do because the SHAC doesn't do SHAC 1 All League, SHAC 2 All League. It's just one thing. I think Caitlin Berger is probably going to get Player of the Year. I think that would have been my pick as well. There are some other good options, right? I think for me, and I'm just going to pick a player from the SHAC too, so we have one from each. I think Brooklyn Manning from Ripley is a good option as she's coming back as the Blue Jays' top scorer. But I think Kelsey Clark, a senior from Fairfield, an all-SHAC selection last season, I think she's a really good option. She averaged 12.5 points and 5 rebounds per game last season with Faith Donley averaging over 15 points. So you figure, just from a maturity standpoint, going from a junior to a senior, the rebounds more than likely going to go up a little bit. With 15 points per game vacated with Donley graduating, I don't see how the points per game don't go up as well. And if you just look to Clark's last 4 games last season, 19, 8, 24, and 18, I mean, that's, you take away the 8 points there, and that's really, if 8 points is a down night for you, that's, a pretty high standard to be held by. So I think, especially in the SHAC too, I think Kelsey Clark probably going to be probably one of the more impactful players. I think a good chance to win Player of the Year as well.
Yeah, and in that 24-point game, I believe we were both kind of watching it because it was against Westfall, and we each had that pick. Like, we had a game picked on that when we did our
I think I had
thing.
Westfall, I believe,
and I think I had
picked Fairfield.
And, she took over in that game. But, yeah, it's I like that pick because, they also, they have, I think it's
and they've had
Vivian
a good run of players.
Hammerling, who will be out for most of the season with another soccer injury, and she's one of their top players coming back. I know they have Riley Quickle. So, they've got some talented players. So I think Fairfield is one that can be interesting on that side. Now, the loss of Faith Donley is going to be huge, but, yeah, that Fayetteville team looks like they could be, super talented and with a lot of depth as well.
Hopefully it doesn't end up like my volleyball pick of Fayetteville last year, where I picked them to win the league, and I think they finished 4th out of 5. Wasn't a great pick, but I think, obviously a lot of things can happen, but, all things going, everybody stays healthy, that kind of stuff. I think Fayetteville gets it done for a second straight year, and that'll, unless you have anything else to add, that covers all 8 of the conferences we were going to go through. A little over an hour, I think about an hour and 20-ish minutes.
Yeah, and that's why we're going to do 2
Right.
episodes.
Yeah.
But yeah, so if we're talking just real quick on like MSL, I would say it's probably probably Bloom, Circleville, maybe. I mean, because Edgington is back, which is exciting. Fairfield Union, Christian Thompson, she scored 30 the other night.
Oh, she's playing.
Yeah,
I didn't think
scored
she
30
didn't
against-
play last year.
She didn't play last year. She plays as a sophomore. She didn't play
Okay.
last year.
That's a wild card back in the fold.
That's a wild card because
Circleville won the MSL last year, right? They went undefeated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then
Thompson's back. Okay.
yeah.
That shakes it up a little bit.
right, because Logan Elm I thought was going to be really good, and they still might be, but they just lost to Fairfield Union and Christian Thompson because she's Christian Thompson. So, who, by the way, we said
She has to like borderline be able to dunk. Like
I know,
seriously.
it's
Like,
at
she
least-
may
at
not be
least
able to,
like a
like-
tennis ball or something.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe not able to like palm a volley or a basketball, maybe a volleyball.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, maybe
because she is
she can probably
tall,
touch rim.
athletic. Yeah, that's why she's going to go to Ohio State for track. Psych. Just so you know, it's not OU for volleyball anymore. It's Ohio State for track.
Really?
Yeah.
So she's not going to OU for volleyball.
Nope, just committed.
So she
Go with her.
decommitted and then committed for a different sport. That's crazy.
Yeah, that'd be nice to have that option. And then you just, you sit out a year and then score 31 in your first
Yeah.
basketball game.
Yeah.
So that would probably be, MSL. Look for our coverage on that. Should be a really good league this year. I'm actually going to be at Logan Elm tomorrow.
Okay.
Or on Tuesday, I guess.
they play?
Southeastern. So
Okay.
so that'll be interesting. Big size difference in that one because Southeastern's got some really good size, but Logan Elm's got some really good shooters and talented players as well. And then the TVC probably is going to be Athens in the big
Waterford
side,
and-
and then Waterford in the small.
Yeah. Federal
side.
Hawking a wild
Yeah,
card. on the
Federal
Hawking
Hawking's the
side
wild
as well.
card. Yeah, so we'll definitely be out trying to watch these teams as much as possible to round up our coverage and be able to get more on the MSL and TVC. But yeah, that's probably it for episode 52.
Yep. Also, look out for the boys. I don't think a lot of people are watching at this point, but look out for the boys conference previews. I'm thinking Friday is when I'll let it go and kind of let it go over the holiday weekend. And man, I don't know. Maybe Thursday. I think Thursday is when. That's what we used to do. Was Tuesday and Thursday.
Yeah, but Thursday's Turkey Day.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
I know, but sometimes people want some.
yeah,
junk
in
to
between
do
football.
and-
Yeah,
They'll tune in. The only reason I don't want to do it Friday is because then you only have Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday,
Right.
and then we release the next one on Tuesday. So I don't know. We'll see.
whatever
Thursday,
whatever your heart desires.
Thursday or Friday, or maybe we just won't. We'll just wait till next Tuesday. I don't know.
No.
We'll see.
We're not.
All right.
We got too many games this weekend. We got one. We're covering.
Yeah, we are going to be. I guess we could talk about it in the next episode. But
Yeah.
Miami Trace Uniota boys this Friday. So. All right.
Yep.
Well, unless you got anything else to add, we pounded through all
Yes,
8
sir.
of those conference previews. So 8 more to come on the boys' side later on this week. But that'll wrap it up for episode 52 here on SOSA Overtime, presented by